We good.
Good. Hey, what's up, everybody? Happy Monday. Happy Monday.
Happy Monday.
Yeah, we got Dr. Drew in the house. One of my best friends, actually, and also colleagues now. I always say, like, when we do these things, it always blows me away at how long we've known and been working with each other. I think now we're like on year 7 or something like that.
Yeah.
So super honored to have Dr. Drew here. Today we're going to be talking about recovery strategies. So this is something that both the doc and I are super passionate about, as you guys already know. And as always, I'll just preface this. If you guys got any questions, please feel free to drop them in the box there and we will get to as many of them as we can. I want to start off today by just giving a little background on Dr. Drew, and then we're going to hear his perspective on how he views recovery, which is really cool and unique. And I've got a little Frenchie down here. You might see him in a little bit. But we're going to dive right into it. So our goal is always to deliver as much value as possible, to connect with you. And I don't know anybody else who, honestly, I'd love connecting with more than this guy right here. So Dr. Drew, I'm going to hand it over to you. But Dr. Drew is an upper cervical chiropractor specifying in the first 2 cervical vertebrae. I first came across upper cervical by studying Paul Chek's work when I had all sorts of orthopedic issues that was limiting me from competing at a high level in sport. And one of the things that always blew me away was I had knee issues and back pain. And even though I was doing everything right, exercise and seeing all the right therapists, there were certain things that just wouldn't go away. And a misalignment, which not too many people catch, to those upper 2 cervical vertebrae. Once I started getting those in alignment, I started seeing so many things well beyond just the physical issues that I had from knee pain and back pain, but how I was sleeping and a whole host of other things started changing. And so I'm really blessed to have Drew in my life. And so Drew, if you would share a little bit about your background and take it away, brother.
Yeah, so one of the things that really got me into upper cervical as far as a technique within chiropractic is the experience that I had with helping me with sleep issues. So back during that time, I was going to school full-time, working full-time, and then I actually had another job where I was actually working at a nightclub. Basically, it was usually like Thursday, Friday, Saturday.
I don't know if I knew that.
Yeah.
Drew bouncing at the nightclub.
So I was up a lot, and so those 2 or 3 nights out of the week, really bad. Plus, I was trying to 22 at the time, so trying to go hard in the gym, right? And basically, my sleep just tanked from there. And then I was able to get through school, and I was seeing a chiropractor the whole time, a traditional chiropractor. Eventually made my way to chiropractic school and heard about this thing called upper cervical. Still having sleep issues the whole time. And within about 2 months of actually getting under care, all those sleep problems went away. And so to that for me was like, okay, what's going on here? Because I was focused on sleep for a big majority of the time, and I also started doing personal training at that time. So working with people, I was always like, okay, how can you recover better? It's all about the sleep. It's all about sleep. And there I was not sleeping myself. So I really just I got hooked on it and really delved deep into the neurology of how the brain works and controls the sleep. And I've since, read a bunch of books, but, all that to really say recovery from a long-term issue was the thing that I was experiencing, a long-term sleeping habit. That's the kind of way I viewed it, right? So it wasn't necessarily a trauma like getting hit or something, but it was really long-term kind of, I don't know, almost like abuse of the body. And so so now what I've taken it is that when I look at recovery, it's what are the things that affect the hardware or our musculoskeletal system and different organs, and then what is the software, what's going on up in the central nervous system that can be changed, and what are the things that influence those?
You said something that I think it just gave me an aha moment, because you said long-term recovery. And I think many of us, myself included, a lot of times when we're thinking about recovery, we're thinking about a specific workout, if we're thinking about that at all, that we're trying to recover from.
Yeah.
Whether I did this many kettlebell clean and jerks, whether I swung the bag this many times, we're thinking about how can we recover from the prior session. But oftentimes, potentially, we're not really thinking about recovery from a long-term perspective. And what I heard you say in terms of sleep, like if we think about sleep, and I've started diving into super deep breathing or breath work, and I'm going to be doing a breath work certification coming up in a few weeks. And it's like those sorts of things, as an example, are great either modalities and or just foundations of health that plug in directly to long-term recovery. So what are some of the other things that come up when you're thinking about long-term recovery, recovering for longevity, maybe we can say it that way?
Yeah, I mean, you bring up a great point with the breath, right? Because I always like to look at like what are the fundamentals? What are the fundamentals that we have to do and we can't get around? One of them is sleeping, the other one is breathing, and then the other one basically is our diet, nutrition, hydration. So how do we go about optimizing those to get the best results? And it's always energy production or energy conservation, and making sure that you're not wasting energy on, like let's just say, for example, you eat garbage food. It's going to take a little bit more energy for your body to process that. And we might be talking small amounts, but small amounts over a long period of time, that's a big issue, right?
No, that's so true. One of the other things that comes up is like, one of the things that we tend to overlook is the importance of like posture and alignment. So I'm certain that having good posture is not new news to anybody here, but one of the things as it relates to the importance of having like good posture, well-aligned posture as it relates to energy and long-term recovery, this was something new when I started studying Dr. Guy Voyer's work. And he I don't know if he actually uses the word posture too much. I don't know if I've even heard him say that. I could be mistaken. But what I have heard is he'll always say the gravity line. And so what he's referring to is like in a well-aligned structure, you've got your ear over the center of the shoulder, center of the hip, aligned over the center of the knee, and then just in front of the ankle. You've got this line, right? And when you look at gravity acts down. And in a well-aligned body, gravity should stabilize the structure. But if you're misaligned, it can destabilize. But one of the interesting things is, and you've seen this like when I've taught, when we do the marching, like core temperature warm-up, we march in place. Oftentimes it'll be a group, and as people are marching, they'll get closer and closer to the center. And that's because their gravity line is typically tipped forward. It's as if you're leaning forward. And what happens is when you're leaning forward to that degree, even if there's decently good alignment or okay alignment, it causes all the muscles on the backside of the body, requires energy to have them pull. And so just from getting someone to have better posture, and then more importantly, probably aligned over that gravity line position, what you tend to see is their energy goes through the roof. And so what you're saying, like nutrition, sleep, breathing, the gravity line as it relates to posture, those are all like, I don't even want to say incremental gains, but those are like massive components to recovery.
Yeah, huge. And the other thing too is like, you hinted to it, but I think sometimes we kind of overlook the significance or the importance of gravity.
Yeah.
Being one of those kind of quote unquote universal forces that no matter we're asleep or we're awake, our body is always having to adapt to it. So this goes right into the whole thing. Is like, so we have our different senses, right? Sight, sound, taste, touch, smell. Those are all coming into the body, and we're having to figure out what to do with it. So if it's hot, maybe we sweat. If it's cold, maybe we warm up a little bit. You eat some food, you produce some digestive enzymes. All of those are sort of adaptive processes. And adapting to gravity is no different in the fact that we have to balance. And so when you're saying making sure that gravity line is straight, or head over the shoulders and all that, anytime that you're not doing that, your body is adapting, so it is potentially wasting energy on pulling yourself back, and then you get the tight neck muscles or whatever it is acting in place of something that theoretically should be acting, so that you're not wasting energy. And so it's this constant battle, and that's where the whole recovery aspect comes in. Is one, are you preventing things from getting worse or going down that path? So are you working on your posture? Are you working on all these different aspects of recovery? And then two, are you actually doing the recovery strategy? So whether it's like a cold plunge or a sauna or whatever, like those are the little things you can do to kind of boost the effect of what you're doing.
Yeah, those are super effective tools for sure. One of the things that I was just thinking about, and this maybe is not classically thought as recovery, but like just the importance of building skill. right? Like one of the things I was thinking about is like if you're a competitive athlete or have been a competitive athlete at any level in your life, or there's a hobby that you like to compete at, the goal oftentimes is to win. The goal is to supersede your last performance, to beat your competitors. And if you've been at it for any amount of time and it's something that you truly care about, you're probably interested in like marginal gains. What are the one or two things that you can do that can give you an extra edge, whether it's an extra rep or a little bit more power on the swing or whatever it may be. And it's like I remember when I was competing in powerlifting, and just by adjusting body positioning, stance, or whatever, I was able to reduce the distance that the bar needed to be pulled. A really big example of this, an easy one, would be like switching from a conventional stance, a closed stance deadlift, to a sumo deadlift. If you're strong enough sumo, you pull quite a bit less inches. Now, there's all other things you can do, but imagine if you had to pull the bar 1 less inches. Or just try this right now. Take your normal deadlift stance, stand on a plate, and see how much harder it is.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
So imagine if within your own movement, whether it's within your own lifts, if you have to do things that now become more efficient, whether it's mechanically or energetically efficient, imagine how that is going to potentially improve your recovery as well. Yep. Because you're actually going to be training the movements that they're designed to be trained, not wasting any unnecessary energy, and then probably causing a lot less stress on the body as well.
Yeah, and that's the whole thing. Like that's the key, is causing less stress so that you don't have to recover from the bad movement, right?
Yeah.
You're just recovering from the muscular damage. And that's sort of like I guess that's one big point, is what is the normal or natural, you can answer this. Like, what do you think is like the normal or natural healing process from any sort of trauma? Like whether it's from working out, or let's say you got surgery, or you were in a car accident and things got all jacked up and you got injured. What do you think is like kind of the process the body goes through to recover and get back to quote unquote normal?
So the first thing that comes up, which I'd love for you to dive into, like first thing that comes up is inflammation, right? So that's just the first thing. What comes up for you?
Yeah, inflammation, right? Those are like so it's important because a lot of times we talk about like, oh, it's inflammation's at the root of all these different illnesses. So here's the dog. He got surgery.
Little guy he's going through an inflammatory process right now. He got neutered, but he's all right.
So the whole thing is like, what's going on? What is inflammation? Because we talk about it a lot, right?
Yeah.
So visibly, you can see things like, he got his eye injured somehow. So his eye's all red, but oftentimes you're going to see a red response. Like if you get hit or you get scratched, you'll see a red response. So that's like a visible way of seeing inflammation. Or you might just see something swollen, but we can also look at it in the blood. So that's what we can test, like inflammatory markers. And it's important to kind of realize how those things happen. So let's say, for example, you get into an auto accident, you have an injury. We can probably test shortly thereafter the blood and see some elevated inflammatory markers, right? Whichever those may be. And then over time, we should see those go down because the body has already has done the healing process, and it no longer needs those signaling molecules to tell the body that everything's all good, we've healed and repaired. But what happens in between then? The inflammation or inflammatory markers circulate throughout the body. And eventually it's going to tell the brain like, hey, central nervous system, something's happened, we need to repair, otherwise we're just going to continuously break down. And so different things get released, whether it's growth hormone or testosterone or different things, that's going to help stimulate the healing process. And then where the actual recovery strategies like stretching and Aldoas and things like that come in is, let's say there's scar tissue that's built up. That tissue no longer has the same characteristics as your what do you call it? Your birthday suit, right? It no longer has the same qualities as the birthday suit, right? So the skin, the ligaments, the tissues, they're all a little bit more frail. Yeah. Or less strong, whatever. That's oxymoron, I guess, unless that's the right word. But they don't have the same quality as the original. So when you go to do something, that's why you're more likely to get injured. If you have an ankle injury, you're more likely to injure that ankle again because the tissues are not quite there. That's the hardware aspect. Then there's the software aspect, in that maybe subconsciously or consciously, you don't have the confidence to move through that range of motion.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's where the whole kind of thing comes together. So that's why I'm excited to talk more about like what are the recovery strategies that we can implement and tools that we can utilize to work on both parts of that.
Okay. That makes super, super sense. Yeah, I mean, one thing that comes up too is like, I'm sure you've had the experience if you've ever rolled your ankle as an example, or you've just tweaked something lightly, you'll notice that the movements that you do after that, you work around that, right? Like Drew was saying, the body will adapt. And so oftentimes if you've got an ankle issue, whether it was conscious or unconscious, your movements are going to reflect some type of compensation because your body's going to want to move potentially away from the pain or away from the restriction. And so maybe something started that hardware issue, but then the software is starting to adjust so that ideally you can survive, right? Mm-hmm. Today's survival is very different than before, 10,000 plus years ago. But at a basic level, at a fundamental level, we're all striving to do the same thing. What would you say, like, what are some of the, I'm curious to hear, what would you say are some of the things that people can look out for, both when someone's looking, because I think too, recovery at any level, mm-hmm. if your body like breaks down more than it can actively repair, and that continues to go, if you stay in a catabolic process for too long, then you're going to either get overtrained or you're going to get injured. It's just a matter of time. Yep. What are some of the things that you can share that might help people pay attention to, like, how do I know if I'm recovering? Like, what are some of the things that you might look at?
Yeah, so like the first thing that comes to mind, this is coming from personal experience, and again, I think there's levels, but the first one is to really just look at your sleep quality. Like, do you wake up feeling rested? That's a pretty simple one. Another one could be, a lot of people have either a Whoop or an Apple Watch, or, they have the different rings that measure heart rate variability or what's your resting heart rate first thing in the morning. Those are great indicators and ways to see when you wake up, like, how was my sleep? Mm-hmm. Do I have a good score? Right? That's a great way.
Can I interject one thing? Because I think what you shared, I think this is so key, because actually one of the questions is an example in kettlebell lifestyle that changes via your stress levels is, did you wake up feeling tired honestly? And so, and I know a lot of people say no, or some people say yes, but I've seen, I just know from my experience, a lot of people say, no, I didn't wake up feeling tired. I woke up feeling with energy. But one of the things I will say is, it's a simple question, but it's a deep question in the sense of, oftentimes we don't think that we're tired because what is normal for us is just, I always feel this way, or I once I get my coffee, I'm good to go. Yeah. So I think it's really important to, when you're asking yourself these questions or when you're checking in with yourself, you're truly doing so from a place of maybe increased awareness, or really checking in, and as opposed to saying, because I do this every day and it's normal, by no means, that shouldn't, checking in, am I really tired? Do I feel like I want to hit the snooze? Could I go back to sleep right now? Mm-hmm. Or am I waking up as if I was waking up with the sun, feeling like I've got a lot of energy to attack the day? What's your motivation level when you wake up? Are you feeling excited, or are you just dragging out of bed? So that question, are you feeling tired? It's I think there's tremendous value, subjective and objective measurements, but definitely asking yourself that question and being honest with yourself is super important.
I think another one too, long term, is if you are, you hinted to it again too, is, are you feeling motivated? Because a lot of times if it's a long term, whether it's a sleep issue or chronic over exercising, when you start to drain the body for long enough, you kind of, the little bit of the chemistry in the brain kind of gets a little bit messed up, and so you might your motivation levels might start to change a little bit. You just be draining the neurotransmitters. That's another one. And the other one that you mentioned also is, can you go out and do your day without the coffee? Right? But not just that, but let's say you do, or you don't have time, or whatever the instance is, when you can't have the coffee, do you end up with a headache later on that day? And a lot of people call that a caffeine withdrawal. It's always a question of mine is how does that doesn't really make sense to me, a caffeine withdrawal. I mean, I guess there could be, but is that always the case? Every single time that you go a day without coffee, do you get a headache? That's one of those. And then also the afternoon lulls. So whether you eat or don't eat, you know, if you're skipping breakfast, skipping lunch, whatever it is, are you getting those sort of afternoon like tiredness things and you just push through it anyways? Or do you feel like you need to have like an energy drink before you go do your workout? Like those are some key like indicators.
Well, I think again, this I think it's going back to being one of the things that comes up for me is going back to being real with ourselves in the sense of like there's no judgment here. Like I love coffee, right? If I go off coffee, oftentimes I'll get a headache. That also lets me know that I'm potentially dependent on that thing, and that's for me. That's I don't know if it's the scary thing is the right word, but that's something that I don't like personally. As soon as I notice that I'm starting to depend on something as a artificial way or as a jump start for what should be natural energy, that lets me know that I'm actually out of balance. So I think it's less about what's right or what's wrong. It's just being honest and real with ourselves. Like if you genuinely are noticing that you need coffee to get your day going, then it would be wise to, you know, consider maybe an alternative for a certain amount of time. But if you're okay with that, then that's fine. But just know, like, if you're, again, not recovering or things are happening slower, you know, you're less motivated. Or another common one is it's taking you longer to warm up. Like you're finding before your workouts, you're having to do a lot of foam rolling and then joint mobility and then all this stuff. And then a lot of like warm-ups with the exercise. And you're finding it's taking you like 30 minutes, I don't know, 20 to 40 minutes to actually feel warm. That's actually a sign that you're starting to head down this path of potentially recovery that's not in balance with what you're outputting. So again, it's not no judgment or anything. It's just us being real, and we have to be accountable for ourselves as well. So again, as the example with coffee, we love coffee, but as soon as it starts running our life, then we just got to be, you know, a little bit more tuned to that.
Exactly. The other thing I wanted to bring up was there's one thing you mentioned earlier was ideally, let's say it's in the workout realm. Ideally, you should be able to perform at least at the level of your last workout. Ideally, a little bit more than that, right? And if you're not, or you're feeling super exhausted, like I hinted at with the sleep, if you're starting to have trouble falling asleep or staying asleep, that's usually like a quick sign. Like, okay, I need to spend an extra day recovering, maybe just a little bit more stretching, and take time off the crushing it workout. Like, that's a really good indicator right there.
Absolutely, yeah. And even in elite sports, like I still truly do feel at a fundamental level, the athlete that goes in like with a high level of skill for sure, and still needs to be in shape and conditions for sure, but that goes in with gas in the tank will oftentimes always outperform, or at least from a longevity standpoint, that athlete that's just crushing it every time. Now, like we're not talking yet about even like the mental component, because someone can mentally be super effing just strong and strong-willed and push past their limits. But from a longevity standpoint, if you want to do what you love for long periods of time, like that was my philosophy, especially in the last few years of competing in kettlebell sport. I knew that if I was technically sound and I was in good enough shape, but that I went in feeling amazing. Like I didn't go into the competition feeling like I had to recover from prior training sessions. Like I went in like this anabolic, charged up, motivated state. Like I knew that with that type of physical preparation, then you combine that with the mental preparation. Okay, it's game day, let's go. I was like, man, I can go so much more than if I go in just feeling like I redlined every session. So I think, it's just slightly like it's a mindset shift for sure.
So we got the pre-frame, right? The preface. What are your favorite recovery strategies? So what are ways we can kind of break that down into? It's usually going to be post-workout, right? But then what are some things that we can do kind of before, or that kind of get us warmed up and ready for our training session?
How about we do this? How about I'll think of my top 3, you think of your top 3.
Okay.
You want to go first?
I'll go first.
All right.
So I think my number one, which you said earlier, is the breathing, breath work.
Okay.
We can get into the reason why behind that. Number 2, cold showers. or cold therapy in general. And then number 3 is actually like doing a workout but using those BFR bands.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
As a recovery strategy.
Okay.
So those I think those would be my top 3.
Okay, so you said breathing, cold showers, and then BFR bands.
Yep.
Okay. I would say for me, floating as a recovery modality. I would say stretching before bed. For me, it's the eldoas. Usually that's what I'll do. So honestly, any type of stretching before bed, when you go into bed, you're not going to be under those pressures of gravity. So your body can actually absorb and take in this new restful, lengthened state. Mm-hmm. So I'd say stretching before bed, floating. And then I would probably have to say, if we had to limit it to 3, some type of joint mobility thing right before training. For me, I would say like those from a recovery standpoint, what I do immediately before a workout. I love floating after trainings, and or stretching, and then after, and especially in the evening. And I think those are the 3. What comes up for you when it relates to breathing? Let's talk maybe about a little bit about each of these 3.
I like breathing because it's simple. I like to keep things simple. The other thing is, if you're focusing on more of the kind of relaxation type of breathing, diaphragmatic breathing, kind of stimulating the vagus nerve, putting you into that rest and digest mode. And the other aspect of it is just simply just getting more oxygen to the body. I mean, it's a very basic, simple principle, but if your mitochondria have more oxygen, they can probably work better. And that's like the most simplistic version of it. But I do enjoy, and I saw you had the book up there, the Wim Hof one, right? Mm-hmm. I haven't read that yet, but like I do enjoy that type of breathing, because it gets you super pumped up, and I'm curious to learn about like how that works. But I just see it as such a great modality for if you do it in not that way, because I always get kind of excited or like pumped up when I do that kind of breathing. So I'm not sure if that's the goal or there's different ways, but I know from doing the diaphragmatic breathing, like crocodile breathing, just really focusing on that, it puts me into that super relaxed state. And I think just the more time we can spend there focusing on our body, the quicker the recovery is going to be. So it's also like a little bit of a mind-body connection type of exercise as well.
Yeah, I love that. I've been, I've got James Nestor's book, Breathe, Patrick McEwen's book, The Oxygen Advantage, got the Wim Hof book, got another one. I've been like diving into so much breath work.
Yeah.
And, the reason for it is, one, I think it's like just not only for health, but just for performance. It's like a thing that is now getting a lot more popular for sure. And there's so many different modalities and so many different ways to go about breathing. Mm-hmm. But from a performance perspective, one of the main things that like Patrick McEwen and even James Nestor talks a lot about is the value of nasal breathing and the importance of nasal breathing, and how even from evolutionarily speaking, we've evolved in our nasal structures and all this sort of stuff. But basically, at a basic level, the relationship between especially carbon dioxide and being more efficient with how we utilize process carbon dioxide and excrete it and going in and out through the nose. Like, one of the biggest things I think that they were sharing in the book that I've been doing, and my partner Lauren's not, if you're watching, Lauren, is not super stoked about, but sleeping with your mouth taped.
Oh, okay.
Like the act of mouth breathing and what that is, and the sympathetic dominance that it can, I think there's a time and a place for it, like Wim Hof and that sort of stuff, to charge up, and there's that you can influence the immune system via that type of breathing. But simply like breathing air in through the nose, and it basically tickles the hairs in the nose, and that actually activates the parasympathetic nervous system. Mm-hmm. Like, there's so many times at night where we're actually switching to mouth breathing, and that's a massive, massive, massive effect on our recovery. Yep. And so if you've never tried it and you're open to giving it a shot, just get some tape. Cloth tape, I guess, works best. I've been using Scotch tape, which doesn't feel the same. Mm-hmm. But tape your mouth and see how good it feels when you wake up. Now, a lot of people have nasal obstructions, so maybe in the beginning you need to use a breathe right strip to kind of open things.
like a football player's wear?
Yeah, I've been using that. I've been using earplugs and tape in the mouth, so that's why I say Lauren's not a huge fan. But it's incredible. I would highly recommend it, and definitely check out the Oxygen Advantage. That's by Patrick McEwen. He goes way deep into it, and it's fantastic. But try that. Like, that can be just a game changer. I'm going to be right back as you continue.
Yeah. So I'm going to go on. Let's see if there's any questions in here. I thought I saw some questions. You guys also want to share your top or your favorite recovery modalities? I'd love to talk about it. I've got a few more, but and I'm sure that Mike does as well. But
what are your top 3 recovery modalities?
Put it on. Sharp pains. I can't see that. Upper back. Sharp pains. Sitting and lying much more lately. Can you expand upon that if you're still on here?
Yeah. Let's hear a little bit more about that. I saw Terry Demas over here. She had shared something. One of my favorite people in the world. Head of personal training at Northwest Vista College.
What?
Honest introspection requires you to be aware and truly listen to your body. Love this. Love you too, Terry. Okay. Jason, okay. Breathing. Epsom salt bath. Taking a big dump. That's true. That's true. Yeah. I like that. Qigong, cold shower, and stretching. Beautiful.
Nice. I've never done Qigong. Have you ever done Qigong?
I have. Not tremendously, but it's definitely, I'm actually organizing a trade right now.
Okay.
With like a Qigong master, and I'm going to teach him Bulgarian bag trading.
Nice.
Yeah. This is the beautiful thing about our industry is you can really connect with some amazing people, and there's some great trades to be had. So I will be learning Qigong soon.
Okay. Do you know nothing about, like, I went to a thing and I think it was Tai Chi.
Okay.
And I get the two confused. And I'm imagining they're pretty different.
You know what? Most all my education on that comes from the working in stuff from Paul. Gotcha. So that's honestly the largest part of my awareness. So I'm not super versed in any of that. Yeah.
I'm curious to try it.
Terry says gratitude meditation, walking meditation, proper hydration.
I love it.
So a note on walking, and I want to give a shout out to Mark England. And I love, if you're not familiar with Mark, check him out. He's got some amazing work in just the world of language and language coaching. But usually his weekly homework, and I'm in one of his programs right now, is 1 45-minute walk once a week with no electronics. Lay down and go for a walk. And one of the, like, if you look at when we're talking about longevity, upright walking is one of the things that made us human, basically, right? One of the things, but then also too, like, if you can walk, you can get in shape, and it's also incredibly integrating as well. And so if you're going through a tough time or you're just wanting to get a new perspective, go outside and go for a walk and just see how things change, especially when you don't take your electronics. And when you look at old people, like we have a bunch of elderly people doing Qigong and Tai Chi, what I think is at the park. They're doing that and they're walking. They're doing a walk around the block or walk around the park. Yep. And it's like it's the one thing that you'll see from young to old that everybody does. Yep. So if I were to pick, like, even the best exercise, in my opinion, it'd probably be walking.
That's my number one pick too.
So shout out, thank you Terry for that. Thank you Mark England as well.
Awesome. So cold therapy in general, I think that's a huge thing. Like, not just there's a bunch of research coming out on it as far as like cryo chambers and things like that. But just anyone who's ever tried it, doing cold showers, like, it gets you pumped up first thing in the morning. Do a cold dunk after you do the sauna. Like, there's something energizing about it, and I've never done it and not felt good afterwards. Not felt a little bit more ready. And especially during those times when I do take a couple days off of coffee, it's like that's the natural boost right there. So I can get through the day and then not need an actual substance because you're just exposing yourself to cold.
Yeah, you know what that brings up too is I was just thinking about there's certain tools. I mean, all these things have the ability to change our state. Yep. Right? Yeah. But one of the things, like you were saying, like, that I love about cold showers is oftentimes, like if I'm a little bit in a funk, I do believe there's a time and a place to sit with it and to be with it. But sometimes you just need to like shake it up. Sometimes just getting some movement, as an example, can just really just shift just a shitty state of being. And oftentimes, like, and this is why oftentimes before podcasts or before teaching, I'll take a cold shower, and it just like, not only does it wake me up, but it like kind of like shakes off the dead leaves. And I feel like I can go into something and like with a much clearer sense of awareness and a much more centered and grounded sense of awareness.
Yeah.
And so there's certain things like cold showers, like imagine, you know, whether it's sauna in a cold tub or just going in the cold tub, you'll walk out, not just physically, but mentally feeling like a different person.
Yeah. And then, I mean, there's like, you know, there's some science behind that as far as like norepinephrine and all these things kind of going on. But those are those are the things I like to kind of geek out on here and there. But either way, that's like one of my favorite things, especially if I ever go on like a long run or a long hike.
Okay.
I'll, you know, take a shower, clean up, and then I'll get an ice bath for a good, you know, 5, 10, 15 minutes. And it's like money. Like it's like just feel amazing afterwards. So that one's key.
I love that.
What was your second one?
So my second one, so I talked about floating was the first one.
Oh, floating. Yeah, go floating.
Shout out to Balance Float in Redwood City. Hit them up, guys. Best place in the Bay. Floating, from just the physical repair and the mental repair and even just the emotional inner work that you can do in the tank. Not to mention just the Epsom salts that are in there, and then the zero gravity, is almost zero gravity that you're in. I love, as a side note, depending on if you go to a float center, you're open to trying it, I love stretching before I go in the tank. So in the past, I would do like one stretch on the floor before hopping in, or even if you stretched at home and then you go in, that can be so tremendous, especially even just like, even if you don't know like Eldoas or anything, just lay down with your back on the floor, lay your feet up the wall, and just straighten your legs to the point that you feel a gentle stretch behind the thighs or behind the legs. Do that and breathe deep. Do that for like 5 minutes, and then go to the float place and hop in the tank. Just watch the impact that it feels in just your wellness and how your joints feel. So floating, I also mentioned stretching before bed. I do believe, for me, honestly, and this is just my perspective, what I've learned over the years from how my body responds. If I do a good job of the normalizing type of stretching after workout, even if it's 1 to 3 stretches, I'm honestly, from like a practicality standpoint, oftentimes I don't do any more than 3 stretches at the end of the workout. I'm like in, out, but in the evening, that's really when I would get it in. And so what I found is if I do a good job of the stretching protocol after workout, just get it in, get something in, and before bed. Before, I used to spend like 30-40 minutes before training doing corrective stretches. And then I would do my mobility, and then I would train. And so my workouts were 1.5 to 2 hours. Sometimes I was doing double days. So it's like then it got really stressful, because I was like, oh my God, I'm not getting my workouts, or I can't devote the time, or I'm missing work, whatever. But what I found is if you do a really good job, and it's at least in there after workout and before bed, you'll have to do so much less even warming up or preparation before training. And then, of course, on your off days, you're just going to feel just so much better. So those have been huge for me.
And then the last one you said was joint mobility?
Joint mobility, or sometimes I'll call it an osteoarticular warm-up.
Okay.
So basically that's going to be a warm-up specifically for the joints. So to create synovial fluid over the joints so you can carry out waste, lubricate the joints. It's also usually the form that I do involves the fascial system, or puts the fascial system, let's say, on tension. And it's to create space opening effects in the joint, but then also from an awareness perspective. So I'll utilize the warm-up to create the awareness of head and neck position, spine position, shoulder position, so that when I go into the workout, I can take that awareness and, again, be more efficient with the skill development as well.
Yeah, and that's like a great way of like blending that idea of the hardware software, right? Like enhancing the 3D map in your brain so that when it comes time to actually move, you have adequate reactivity of the other muscles to stabilize certain joints, right?
Love that.
Stabilize your balance and stuff like that. Love it.
Yeah, I think for me, I do think personally there is a a formula to an effective and balanced, let's say a balanced workout.
Mm-hmm.
And in my opinion, I know you have a very similar viewpoint. There needs to be some type of warming up your core temperature before, to warm up the fascial system, to warm up the joints, to get that synovial fluid. There needs to be some type of thing that integrates the hardware and the software with some type of joint mobility, increase the awareness. Mm-hmm. Then usually there'll be some brief point of skill development with the exercises that you're doing.
Yep.
So oftentimes the best warm-up is the exercise that you're about to do. So if you're going to do Bulgarian bag spins, provided you do the prep work that we're just talking about, it doesn't have to be long, honestly. And what you'll find is it's like flossing the teeth. The more that you do it, the less often that you need to do as many reps.
Yep.
Then some skill work, you hit your workout, and then a quick stretch or two or whatever you want to do based off your body. As a general format, that is a money formula that you can take from the rehabilitative realm all the way to the highest levels of performance.
Yep. And then the last one that I had was the BFR bands.
Oh, yeah. So talk about that. Yeah.
So a lot of people are unaware of this, or they are, and they think it's just mainly like for bodybuilding and stuff like that.
Okay, can you explain? Yeah, explain.
To try to get the pump.
And BFR.
The pump.
And BFR stands for what?
Blood flow restriction. So even that in and of itself sounds kind of scary.
Yeah.
Because like...
I'm scared. No.
Because you think that you're actually like stopping blood flow, and really... The goal of putting on the bands, let me backtrack a little bit. These bands that you put on, you can use multiple different ways of doing it. So sometimes they're using like an adapted sort of blood pressure cuff, right? That one of them's going to go approximately here to your arm, so close to the shoulder, and another one's going to go high up on the thigh. That's generally where they're going to put them. And so sometimes they might be an inch or two as far as the width. Maybe a little bit more. You can use something like a blood pressure cuff type of BFR band. You can use an elastic type of band. I think they have a few other ones that are out there. But what's the idea behind it, right? The blood goes from our heart. We have our blood pressure, right? 120/80 is kind of the general blood pressure. When you're putting these bands on, they really shouldn't go above that point to which you can no longer get blood to the muscle. Okay. So you're not overcoming that and creating a tourniquet. That would be bad.
Yeah, because
that would be bad, because then your limbs would start to turn purple, right? The thing that we're really working on is slowing down the flow of blood leaving the muscle. Okay, and so what that essentially does is creates a more concentration or a higher concentration of lactic acid in the muscle. Probably a few other things too. But when that lactic acid eventually leaves the muscle after you take the cuffs off, it starts to circulate throughout the blood, and we're getting right back to that point I talked about earlier as far as inflammation. That lactic acid makes its way to the brain. The brain's like, oh no, trauma has been done. Time to release the growth hormone. And time to start the reparation process. So that's kind of like this tool that we can use as long as you're not doing it, as long as you follow kind of the protocol, right? You're not doing your 1 rep max. You're doing 20 to 30% of your 1 rep max. You're doing it for high reps. So it's a completely different way of exercising, but you're using it in the aspect or with the goal of recovery.
Okay.
You're not trying to tax your body. You're just simply trying to get the benefits of what your body naturally does. And what's cool is that you're not taking any drugs, there's no supplements to be used. It's just your body's doing what it naturally does.
So with this sort of stuff, would this be a supplemental workout? Like let's say you're training for something. Would this be something that you would do at the end of a session? Would it be its own day, or how have you found it best working?
You can do it for both. And what's really nice is that you can start to find out what works best for you. So let's just say, for example, was it yesterday? Yeah, yesterday I played basketball for almost 2 hours. So my feet are a little bit sore, like my calves are sore because I never played basketball, but I just found out I have a court at my apartment. So I was like, let's go. And so what I did last night, actually, after a couple hours of just resting, I put them on my quads, put them on my arms, and I just hopped on my recumbent bike, my Airdyne. I just got on there and cruised at a decent pace. I felt a little bit of that burn. But I know, because I've done that before, just watching a show or something, that I don't get any sort of fatigue without wearing those. I could just sit on there for like 2 hours and just be totally fine. But with those, after about 20 minutes, I was like, okay, like my legs are fried, right? So I just took them off. That's one way of using it, sort of like as a post-workout.
Okay.
Another way of doing it is you can put them on and go and do squats or leg extensions and just really get that pump. Just do that for a couple sets. And again, there's protocols out there to do it. What I found is that I can actually shorten my workouts. So instead of doing like 2 or 3 different types of circuits, I can just get away with doing like 1 or 2, cut the reps down a little bit, and then I put the bands on, finish off the workout by just doing like some high rep squats.
Okay.
So the other thing I'm also thinking about when doing it is lessening the risk of potential injury on my body.
Okay.
You know, because if you get fatigued, you're doing more and more reps of something. I'm just like, well, let me just not do that. Let me get the best benefit out of doing the workout or the exercise, just create that kind of mind-body awareness, and then go and do this to kind of create that extra little stimulus.
Interesting. Have you ever tried it? So you're saying like with repetitive movements like cycling or stuff like that, or even just high rep squats.
Yeah.
Have you had any experience? Do you have any thoughts on maybe incorporating or not incorporating it on like higher skilled movements or technical movements? Is it usually like more not isolate? You know what I'm trying to say? Like,
yeah,
would there be a difference if I was trying to do like a barbell snatch, even if it was a lightweight, or compared to like bicep curls, or is there it can work with anything?
My gut. I haven't seen any research on that.
Yeah.
My gut is telling me you'd probably be better off if you're doing like high skill development stuff like that to not use it.
Yeah.
Because then you're just adding in one more level of complexity.
Yeah.
And to some capacity, you are changing a little bit of like the origin insertion points a little bit.
Huh.
So remember like muscle anatomy, how they have that. So like you're compressing right there, right? So you're changing that a little bit. And when you put them on, you'll notice it. You'll be like, oh, okay, like my
mechanics feels a little off.
Just the tiniest bit different. So I probably wouldn't mess with that if you're doing skill development.
Yeah.
But let's say you are, and that's like the main thing. You want to be really proficient in doing the barbell snatch. So you do your session, you work at it. Maybe you don't tax yourself that much, and then you just grab the bar, or let's say you know your 1 rep max for squats, for example. You take 20% of that. You bang out 20 to 30 reps, rest, do another 15 to 20, rest, do one more set, and you're good. And it's kind of like, have you ever done the, what's the name of that program? Super squats? Have you ever done that?
No.
Where it's 20 squats with like your 10 rep max or something like that?
Oh, no, I haven't
Ever done that?
Oh.
Just creates a massive burn in your quads. It's kind of like that, but you don't need a heavy weight.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I was thinking too, like with high skilled, that would be my gut instinct. But I've only used the BFR just at Vasper or through you. But I just like my gut would tell me for like super high skilled movements, especially if the goal is developing high levels of skills, like like in the presence or not. Like I've experienced for sure in the presence of lactic acid, your ability to maintain high levels of skills goes way down. It's like if you look at a boxer, right? As soon as fatigue and lactic acid starts going in, they're potentially not as sharp with their punches and that sort of stuff. So it would make sense to, if the goal specifically is skill, like high skill development, like keep that as the main thing and then utilize this to supplement that.
Yeah. Do we have any questions in there? I have another thought on that.
Sean Parks, what's up, brother? Been utilizing BFR bands here and there. Gonna jump back on them. Nice.
Awesome.
Matt says, banded joint work is great for me. Cool. Oh, here, Drew, you take this one. Would you recommend Indian clubs for joint mobility as well?
Short answer, yes. Long answer, it's freaking awesome. I love doing the, you said Indian clubs, right?
Indian clubs, correct. Yeah, not club bells.
So I use like the 1 pound. I usually just use the 1 pound. And actually, once you start to get used to the movement, you can use other tools that create a similar effect. So what I found is those, is it called RMT rope?
The RMT, the WEC rope? The RMT. Yeah, the RMT.
So what I found is just wrapping that around my hand a couple times. So the part that actually makes the handle is hanging out.
Oh, nice.
You can do that range of motion drill, but you're using the momentum of the rope. Different implement, same concept as going through the range of motion. And so what I'm always going back on is like, are you getting the kind of desired effect of like what's going on with the hardware, moving things around? But then now you're actually developing a little bit different of a skill for kind of like the hardware software like combo of having to deal with the momentum of the rope so you don't hit yourself, because they're they're just free flying. So that's another way I like to do that.
I love that. Yeah, and you're using what's below the handles as the position, so it is a little more weighted at one end. Is that right?
Yeah,
it is. Okay, yeah. And I think I'll even use like 1/2 pound clubs.
Yeah.
Like way lighter than one might even think, but just that little bit, and then of course just the construction of having any type of load further from the extremity. That's why I look at like a mace, right? Mm-hmm. You could lift like a 5-pound mace or 15-pound mace, and it's super heavy, and it's because of how far away the load is from like the anchor point, let's say, or the point. And so just having even a 5-pound that's offset or a rope, like you're gonna get that gentle traction in the joint, and it feels amazing. Like those, and also too, like looking back to old methods of recovery, old methods of developing strength from the strongman. I mean, Indian clubs have been around for so long.
Yeah, forever.
And then good nutrition, good sleep, good breathing. Like
we didn't even talk about nutrition. Yeah.
Yeah, but all that stuff is absolutely critical. What would you say? And it could be one of the three that you had shared. What would you say is like maybe the most overlooked aspect of recovery? Is there anything that comes up? And it could be something that we already discussed. And if you have an idea, we'd love to hear what you have to say too. So type it in. But what do you think is the most overlooked aspect of recovery?
So what comes to mind is sort of like, I mean, I have my bias, right, of being a chiropractor and working in this field, especially in the upper cervical region. And
no, should be coming back.
Paused.
There we go. We're back.
We back?
Yeah, we're back.
Okay. So my bias tends to lean on looking at, so we talked about inflammation as being that thing that is perceivable both objectively. We can measure it through the blood, we can see it, and then also sometimes you can actually even feel it. But when it comes to that, like when it comes to inflammation, what's controlling to making sure it doesn't get out of hand? Or what's actually controlling the adaptive process? What's sending the blood? What's controlling the blood flow? And it always points back to the central nervous system or the brain. So that's what I always lean to, and why I think that this kind of aspect of either chiropractic or more specifically upper cervical, because it tends to have a more direct impact into the brainstem, and brainstem being that area where I think we lost connection again.
There we go.
We back on?
We're back.
Okay.
Sorry, guys.
But the brainstem being that area that kind of controls, or not kind of, but it does control the different autonomic functions. So if you just think about what those are, right? We're talking about blood pressure, heart rate, blood flow to different tissues, and then also the secretion of different hormones. And then also controlling the sleeping process. Right? So if we take into consideration all those things, at the underlying or the bottom of it is like the adaptation to no matter what we give the body, whatever stimulus it is, has to be interpreted and perceived, and then also like coordinated up in the brain in order for things to kind of happen. So that's how, I guess, like, I don't know if is it like, not tooting my own horn, but like that's how important I see it is to doing the work to make sure the nervous system is balanced. And so you just got to look at different ways you can do it. So that's why I said that the heart rate variability on the watch is a great way to monitor it on your own. Checking in with yourself in the morning to make sure that your sleep is adequate, your resting heart rate, things of that nature. And then obviously you can, you go to your different practitioners to check and see, like, how is my nervous system even working? Is it working normally or optimally? And then how can you improve it from there?
I love that.
Yeah.
Okay. What comes up for me, and this is a hard one. Shout out to Terry. She says hydration. I think that's so solid.
Boom.
Oh man, this is tough. Maybe it's just because it's at the forefront of my mind is the breathing stuff because of all the studying that I'm doing right now. I'm gonna go with breathing. Yeah, I'm gonna stick with breathing. Also because of I think because of from a recovery perspective from overlooked, and it's getting way more let's just say headway now, or way more awareness placed on the importance of breathing, but from just a functional level and a physiological level, but then also from a performance perspective. Like even when you look at the major muscles of respiration, let's say, I mean, the diaphragm in and of itself is one of the most important muscles of respiration. It's also one of the most important muscles for the stability of the spine. And so whether we're looking at it from like, again, give this a shot. Try to sleep tonight, and if you have a blocked nose, go get some nose right strips. See if that'll help. Open that up. Put that little plastic strip there, and then tape your mouth shut, and just watch what happens and how if you can do that. And like I think in the book they were saying like it could take a few months to kind of retrain that so that you don't naturally just open your mouth. And there's other things that you can do. I think it's called a snore strap or something like that. You could wear something, but easy, just tape your mouth after you and your sweetie, after she goes to sleep, tape it. But it's so incredible what a good night's sleep feels like.
Yeah.
And even again, this is some of the things like we all know. I would say sleep maybe is not an overlooked aspect. I think everyone will recognize sleep, but why, if you're sleeping the right amount of hours, etc., but you're not waking up rested, a lot of times it's because you're switching to mouth breathing, or you're primarily breathing in and out through the mouth. So from like a physiological functional perspective for general health, but then also the performance benefits of it, I would say I think those two or three going on with Terry, like hydration, breathing, and then the alignment of the spine, specifically the upper cervical, and how that influences the nervous system. Fuck, like though if you're paying attention to just those, not just those, but those three things, you're in a really good spot.
Yeah, and the other thing too is that like, just like you have kind of mind, body, spirit type of, when looking at it that way, they're always interacting.
Yeah.
Right. So like the hydration, to make sure you're getting adequate food, making sure that you're getting adequate movement, oxygen, right? Like those are like the fundamentals. And then you have like the mind aspect of it. It's like the coordinator. I always think of it as like the, what is it called? The guy.
The conductor?
The conductor.
The conductor.
That's why I always think of the nervous system as a conductor. It's taking it all in and kind of coordinating it that way. And then spirit, of course, can never be wrong. It's always pure, right? So it's just a matter of connecting to that more frequently.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
So that's there was another question on here, right around like the Indian clubs.
When you describe floating, this person says, when you describe floating, it reminded me of a scene from the movie Splash. I have not seen that. When Tom Hanks was in the water tank. That's Sid writing down a bunch of notes, cold releases, adrenaline.
Yep.
No, I think that was it.
There was another one I wanted to touch on about the bands or something like that, maybe.
Huh. Well.
Oh well.
What we're gonna do, because I know it's we've been here for an hour, so thank you guys for tuning in. What I want to do, close this thing off. First and foremost, saying thank you, Drew.
Thank you for having me.
Super fun, bro. Thank you. Thank you guys for tuning in. Next month, Dr. Drew's coming back.
What?
Well, we're gonna I'm gonna do more lives with Dr. Drew on different topics, so he'll be back for sure. But next month, the date I don't have off the top of my head. Do you happen to have it?
I think it's like towards the end of June.
Towards the end of June, he's going to be leading a 90-minute workshop for our community, just our community, on what you can do around migraines and headaches. Do you want to maybe chat just really briefly about that?
Yeah. So I've been doing this workshop in my office now for the past several months, and the feedback I got is just incredible from people saying like, I wish I would have known this information, and like, why isn't this out there more? So when I connected with Mike and he was doing these workshops, it's like what a great way to share it with more people. So if you yourself or someone you know, and here's where the workshop kind of comes in, chances are well over half of you know someone, if it's not yourself, who suffers from migraines. Like, that's just the way the numbers show. Maybe the people on this channel are a little bit more healthy, or they work on it a lot more than the average person, but chances are you know someone who suffers from migraines. So it's going to be a great way just to kind of learn more about it. There's three main things that we talk about on there. One of them has a lot to do with posture, and then what that can kind of cause, and then also the other thing is like brain blood flow, and then also this nervous system thing that everyone knows that migraine is ultimately a nervous system issue, but they don't know what to do about it.
Got it.
And that's kind of the frustration of people who suffer from migraines, is like, oh, that's great, I just have to learn to live with it. So it's really like giving some tools and things that you can do to actually overcome it.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. I'm super excited. That's going to be the end of June. You'll be hearing way more about it, but we're going to have Drew back for many more of these, hopefully maybe every 2 weeks or so.
Yeah.
We'll have him back going into topics. I wish you guys a great evening. Drew, thank you again, brother.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you.
See you guys.
See you. Recover well. Boom, boom, boom. Oh, you guys are so welcome. So welcome.